The wife's story. How about that ending? Oh, no, it was totally unexpected. I mean, how could anyone expect anything like that? It was like the opposite of what I thought was going on. That's why I had to read it twice. I mean, I not read the whole thing twice, but I have. But the ending, I was like, what? I read the last page again. Like, I don't, what happened here? Because it short circuited my brain. Um, is it filmable or unfilmable? What's your opinion? What do you say? Why would it be? Why would it be unfilmable? Why? I know why. You would ruin the surprise because you remember that a movie is a visual media where you're seeing everything. You're seeing what's going on. The story is just describing, and you have a woman whose wife was like describing things and giving an account, but you're not really seeing her, so you don't know what she looks like. If you made a movie, you have to show them, and there's no surprise. You're seeing them, so that's why I say it's unfilmable. How do you make a movie out of that? That's why I said I don't know how you can make a movie out of that. For me, it's impossible. Maybe some genius out there has a way of doing it. God bless them, right? But I don't know. I mean, it was impossible. What's the surprise, by the way? And who's the wife? Now, who is the wife? I mean, the wife is the wife. What is the wife? Because all the time we're making this assumption, right, that the wife is specific thing, and the wife is not what we thought she was. Tyler, all this time when you were reading it, did you know she was a wolf? No, you don't know. You think she's human. That's why the ending is so confusing. You think something is happening. Wait a minute. What's happening here? What happened at the end? She thought she was probably cheating on him or whatever because he was going out. And then one day he goes out, he comes back, and something weird's going on. What happens at the end, guys? Yeah, but who he turned into what? What did he turn into? Tyler, you were saying? But when you were reading it, did it? I mean, I don't know. Maybe you're a smarter guy than I am. Who knows? Um, was that your first impression that he was turning into a human? It was the other way around. That's what I thought too. I thought when I read the story, it's like it takes the werewolf thing and it reverses it. Instead of telling a story of humans, she decided she's very sneaky, Ursula K. Le Guin, and she tells a story of wolves. And the guy was a werewolf. So they freak out when they see him transforming into what? A human, not a wolf. So it's like in reverse. And of course they kill him because they get out of fear. You fear the unknown. And wolves are, they're very feral. They killed the guy. He was a threat to the pack, and they were very protective. So that's what happened at the end. Was like what? And for me, it was impressive. It's really worthy of reading. I've never read anything like that. It really reversed everything. So at the end, you have a werewolf, but like in every movie, the danger is when he's becoming the wolf. That's not what happens in this story. He's always a wolf, married to a wolf, who is the narrator, and he turns into a human, and that's what freaked him out. I thought that was very cool. I don't know you guys, but I enjoyed that story. What narrational mode is being used here? First person? What? Why is it first person? You said it's first person. I agree. Why? We have first person narration when what happens? When we have a character from the story who is the narrator, that's first person. Because the other two narrators, third person, unlimited, omniscient, and third person limited are not inside they're not characters, they're not inside the story. They observe the events from outside of the story. That's how simple it is. And you will be tested on that. Okay? Any questions about the white story? Today we're going to begin what I told you early in this collection we will be doing. We're going to be engaging something called literary criticism. And literary criticism is an approach to literature that allows us to have a deeper understanding of these literary works. And there are different approaches. The approach that we're going to be using, which is a very smart approach, is called the biographical approach. And what that approach states is that you can understand the works of an author better if you examine the life of the author. Why? Well, when an author writes something, where does that come from? From space? When someone writes something, where did that stuff come from? Okay, I mean, people can use their imagination, but nobody is so smart that they use pure imagination or even, I don't know, maybe even 50% imagination. There's something else. And what informs your writing is our own life experiences, your own life, what you have lived, what you have gone through, what you have tasted, what you have seen, what you have heard, what you have smelled, what you have felt. That is what informs your writing more than anything else, even more than the imagination. So that's why we have this approach, the biographical approach, that states that having an understanding of a person's life will cast light into the works, the literary works of that individual, of that person. And the person that was chosen by the book is Edgar Allan Poe. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share a short video with you guys now on why we should be reading Poe. And here we go. Okay, guys, did you enjoy the video? Interesting, right? Okay, so let us study the life of this person, right? I left a presentation in the LMS, the one that you're seeing here. It's titled "The Tragic Life and Legacy of an American Literary Giant, a Master of MOAN, Poe." I call him the Master of MOAN because that's what he seemed to do all of his life, moan. Um, Here's a quote from Eulalie, a poem he wrote in 1845, where it says, "I dwelt alone in a world of moan." When we talk of the great names in the field of horror, I've told you before that three names come to mind, them being Stephen King, H.P. Lovecraft, but before them, there was Edgar Allan Poe. And his contributions to the genres of horror and also the mystery, which is another genre we know as a detective story, are considered to be enormous. Some people think that he invented the genre of horror. He did not, as you saw in the last video, but he popularized it. He also popularized the short story format in a time when people enjoyed reading more novels. So having someone change that paradigm, that way of thinking, is an impressive feat, an impressive literary feat to popularize an entire new format, the short story. And he did so because he believed that part of transmitting the mood and the atmosphere that he wanted to in his readings is something that had to be done in one sitting. He is the creator of the genre of the detective story or the mystery. We're going to talk more about that later. Here we are talking about this man almost 200 years after his death, and you're going to see the reason why. Let's talk about his very tragic life. I would say that his life is as tragic as many of the stories that he wrote. I do not envy this man's life. Edgar Poe, not Edgar Allan Poe, that came later. Edgar Poe was his birth name. He was born in January 19, 1809, in Boston, Massachusetts, to Elizabeth Arnold and David Poe. A year later, Daddy abandoned the household. They were actors, both mom and dad, and Daddy left Elizabeth alone with this child, this toddler. However, a year after that, the mother died when he was only 2 years old, and she died of consumption. Does anybody have any idea what consumption is or was? It has a different name today, but consumption was probably the scariest and most devastating illness of the 19th century. It is known as the cancer of the 19th century because of all the people it killed. It is believed that probably a quarter of the American population that died during the 19th century died of consumption. Anybody? Consumption. I don't think you will. I don't think you will die of that because you're vaccinated, Mr. Hayhen. You were saying tuberculosis. Exactly, tuberculosis. And I'm saying that you're not going to die of that because you guys are vaccinated. That vaccine that is called the TB, that you have several shots during your childhood, it's against that. So TB, tuberculosis is not going to touch you. Back then, it killed many people. It was comparable to the amount of people that are killed by cancer today. You know that chances are you're going to die of cancer. Um, Back then, chances were you were going to die of tuberculosis. My mother had tuberculosis when she was alive, and she ended up losing half a lung. It's a very devastating and debilitating and virulently infectious disease. It's very easy to was very easy to spread, and you would start like coughing, and then after a while you'll be coughing, and blood will be coming out with the cough, and little by little your lungs will be turned into mush, and you will die coughing out your lungs, to put it mildly. And he saw that. A 2 year old is seeing mommy dying that way. It was a bloody death, horrible death, slow, painful, weakening death. In the 19th century mindset, it was considered to be romantic. If you see many silent movies of the early 20th century that are romantic, usually you have like the woman in her very large ruffled pajamas and with a handkerchief, and she's like, and little drops of something on it, and at the end she dies, and he lost her love, and that was considered romantic, right? Anyway, when you're dead, you're dead. There's nothing romantic about death. When mommy died, this couple from Richmond, Virginia, the Allens, they were a wealthy matrimony, couple from Richmond, Virginia. As I said, they were in the tobacco industry. They were childless and decided to adopt little Edgar. And they changed his name to Edgar Allan Poe. But even though, the interesting thing is, even though they changed his name legally by giving him their name, Edgar Allan, the Allens, they never formally adopted him. I don't think Daddy was that interested in adopting him legally. So they gave him a better life than most orphans could have anticipated. When he was very young, the family moved to England for a while, and while in England, he enjoyed an education in very nice schools in England. Later on, they came back to America. They came back to the United States. And when he was like 16, 17, he enrolled in college. He went to the University of Virginia in 1826. It was during this time that Edgar Allan became estranged from his father. Um, he was not a very nice person for whatever reason. Francis Allen was very doting and very nurturing towards Edgar, but Daddy was cold and distant. And Daddy gave him money to go to university. Apparently, it was not enough money, and for whatever reasons, Edgar decided to resort into gambling while in college. And he was gambling to get more money, and of course, he sucked at gambling, and he was losing money. And during this time, Mr. Allen wanted nothing to do with him. You're going to be reading a letter next week titled "Letter to," I think it's John Allen, and it's a very interesting letter. The fact of the matter is that he never told Edgar that his foster mother Frances was dying. She was sick. Guess what she had? Make a wild guess. She had TB. She had consumption. So Edgar learned about it when she was almost dying, or almost close to death. So by the time he got to Virginia, he got back home. She had been buried already. He got there too late, so he couldn't say his goodbyes to her. The fact of the matter is that for whatever reason, Edgar and John Allen became reconciled again, and this time Edgar said that he would help. I'm sorry, John said he will help Edgar. So Edgar was uh, enlisted in the army for a while. He did not want to continue in his tour, his 5 year tour. So Daddy, having connections, helped Edgar get out of the army and go into West Point after 2 years of army service. Have you ever heard of West Point? What is West Point? It's a very prestigious university. It is the most prestigious military university in the world. Okay, it's like the Harvard of military schools. It's the University of the Army. Usually, the people that come out of West Point become generals, and things like that. So he was enrolled in West Point. During that time, John Allen got remarried because he was a womanizer. Even when his wife was dying sick, he was like cheating on her. That's the kind of man that John Allen was. And after he got married, apparently the wife did not like Edgar, so they had a fall off again, a fallout, I mean. And this time they were like completely separated from each other. They did not speak to each other ever again. And Edgar abandoned West Point because he couldn't continue paying for it, right? He left West Point and he went to live with his aunt on his mother's side, right? And that happened in February 8th, 1831. He went to live in Baltimore. Let's talk about a little bit about his publishing career. He began writing and publishing short stories, but Edgar had a problem. First it was gambling, and guess what it was now? That drawing is a hint. He liked drinking. Yeah, he liked drinking, and he became an alcoholic. And that got him in trouble because he would go to work for different publications, like different newspapers, like the Saturday Visitor, and he would do work at criticizing literary works and things like that. And he was very good at his work, other than the fact that most of the time when he got to work drunk. And when you get drunk to your work, what's your boss gonna do? Yeah, he was fired, and it was not the first time this happened. Several times it became like a routine. Get a new job. Get cleaned up, get a new job, be good at it because he was good at what he did. Then start getting drunk, getting fired, clean up again, and it was like a vicious circle. That's why this guy never. He was always poor, even though he was so talented. Um, After a while, he got married with his cousin, Maria Clem's daughter, his cousin, Virginia. She was 13, and he was, I think, 30 or something like that. So, ew, right? But that was normal back then, okay? Today, you would call that, you would arrest the guy, right? Because she's not of a consenting age. Back then, you were 13, you're a woman, you can have children, and you get married to this guy. So he married Virginia. During this time, he continued doing literary journalism, and he moved between New York and Philadelphia between 1838 and 1844. He had little success as a professional because of his alcoholism, but he established himself as a writer, a published writer, and he invented the detective story. As you saw in the video, the first detective story ever written was written by him. It was called The Murders in the Rue Morgue, about some prostitutes that are getting their throats slashed in the Red District area, right? Very sordid. And at the end, the case is solved by the first detective ever in literature to use deductive reasoning. And no, it's not Sherlock Holmes. It's C. Auguste Dupin. C. Auguste Dupin was the first detective that used deduction to solve cases. And this was later on copied by Arthur Conan Doyle in his character Sherlock Holmes, which is clearly based on C. Auguste Dupin. Most people don't know that, right? But Poe wrote several detective stories that laid down the foundation for the detective novel, for the mystery. So you can see Poe was very influential, very influential. He continued writing his horror tales like Ligeia, which he considered to be his best one, The Pen and the Pendulum, which you're going to read in high school. You stay in Froben. The Fall of the House of Usher, which is about a guy who's going to visit his friend, his roommate from college after many years, and he finds him living in the middle of a swamp and this gigantic mansion that is like sinking. And he lives there with his sister, but his sister is also his wife. Ew, right? That's the story. And you have stories like Mask of the Red Death. The Mask of Red Death is wow. That's the story. That's the post story that I think of the most during this pandemic. It's about these people that are partying in a medieval castle, and their parties are wild. I mean, they dab into all kind of sinful behavior, and they're locked away in their castle, partying. All these rich people, while the people in the city are dying in the middle of a plague, the Black Plague. And all of a sudden, this guy appears uninvited. So the owner of the castle is giving him a tour of, what do you want to do? You want to do this? You want to do drugs? You want to do that? This, that, the other. Um, and he starts bragging about how untouchable they are until he sees a spot in his arm. The spot means that he got infected with the same thing that people had out there in the street. Anybody gets infected inside the castle. And the guy that came in with that red mask, guess who it was? Guess who was that guy that appeared uninvited? Well, I'll wait for you to tell me, okay? That's homework. Find out who appeared uninvited, and you're gonna tell me in the next class. Um, in 1842, when his wife Virginia was 24, she died. Guess of what? Before that, a few years, Maria Clem died, his mother-in-law slash aunt. Guess what she died of? Are you seeing a pattern here? Well, what the pattern that you're supposed to be seeing here, that the people that are closest to him, the people that who he has loved the most, are dying on him, and they're dying horrible, bloody, debilitating deaths. So, I mean, what does that do to a person's mind? Are you seeing? Are you seeing? Are you seeing what's going on here? Why he's an alcoholic? So she died. That destroyed him. That completely devastated. He became even more not only an alcoholic, then he became a drug addict. After that, he was using things like absinthe and those 19th century drugs and opium. You know what we use opium for, right? I mean, I don't use opium, thank God. But people that use opium, you know what comes out of opium. During this time, he wrote Annabelle. That's my favorite poem, Annabelle. When we had literature in seventh grade, you guys used to read Annabelle in this kingdom by the sea. Very beautiful poem, very hauntingly romantic poem. One day, went out on a business trip, and he disappeared for 3 days. And his family was asking, where is he? And they found him in Baltimore, in front of a saloon, with clothes that did not belong to him, and in a delirious state. He was like going in and out of consciousness. They took him to the hospital, and he spent several days in a coma. I think it was 3 days. On his last day, he woke up screaming, "God, have mercy on my soul." And he died. I do not envy this guy's life one bit. So sad. What happened to him? Some people say he died of alcohol poisoning. There are some other theories that we're going to be exploring later on next week. His legacy. Well, I already said he popularized the short story format. He was renowned as a master critic of literature. He perfected the Gothic genre. He perfected horror, and he's one of the masters of horror. He invented the detective story, and he has influenced countless writers, very famous writers. Some writers that are probably even more famous than he is. He influenced them. People like Arthur Conan Doyle, H.P. Lovecraft, Oscar Wilde, Ray Bradbury, George Bernard Shaw, just to name a few. Here is a list of his works. I want you to memorize this list because in the test I'm going to be asking you to mention some of his poems and some of his stories. So you can check that list out. Look into it, please. And there's these questions here that you need to answer and upload. I want to remind you guys that I have some people that keep on sending me email of work telling me that they're sending it through email because they could not upload it, and you're wasting your time if you're doing that. You do not I cannot accept the email. I am sorry. It has to be uploaded. If you have trouble uploading, you need to call the office and ask for technical assistance with the upload. They will help you. You know they do. But sending through email is not an option. So some people should stop doing that because it is not an option. It's not, it's like wanting to go to the moon on a boat. It can't happen. The only way to go there was a spaceship, right? The only way to accept this work is for it to be uploaded to the LMS. Okay, so please answer those 5 questions. That would be it, guys, for today. Any questions?